and welcome to Monday night here on DJN TV. And for those of you in the photo booth world, we're broadcasting to the Photo Booth Network channel and Idea Share and Expo. Oh, we got a lot of stuff we're going to cover tonight. Tonight, my guest is Jerry Bazata. Good evening, Jerry.
Good evening, John. How are you?
I am doing well, doing well. We have got a ton of ground we're going to cover tonight. Talking PPP for that side of things, talking what you're seeing for possible the rest of the 2020 as far as financing funding. And then we're going to look into 2021 and talk about what we're seeing and what things will look like in 2021 tonight. So,
correct.
Oh man, a lot of ground to cover. So Jerry, let's kind of get into it. The last we talked, it was getting towards the final draft of the PPP forgiveness requirements that had just come out, and now we're a little farther down the road. So kind of bring us up to speed of what's going on with that process and what some small businesses who did this and have it, what they should be doing.
Okay. There has actually been a couple of changes from when we last discussed, and that is that the SBA came out with two different applications. They came out with the basic forgiveness application, which was far pared down from the original one that was released in June. The second thing is they also created an easy application, which for many of the DJs, photo booth guys, everybody that's been involved, the easy application is probably going to be your one you're going to be of choice. So right now, the SBA has not started accepting the forgiveness applications. They don't plan to open up that portal until probably August 10th, if not later. My speculation is they wanted to clear out the EIDL loans. They wanted to make sure all those were done. They wanted to make sure the last of the PPP applications, which they expire August 8th, go through the process. Now, at my particular bank, we've already started alerting customers by sending them links. A lot of your banks are going to require you to do this via online. So they're going to look for you to complete the application through some type of link and also provide the supporting documentation. I was on a test basis for some of my clients in looking at the PPP program and looking at how this is all going to work. And let me give you some of what we validated or what we've looked at so that it will help many of you out there as you go through this process. So let's walk through what is actually going to happen is once your bank is willing to or opens up whatever resources they have to accept these applications, the bank's responsibility is to validate your information. So they're going to make sure that what you put on that application matches what you originally submitted, and that in fact you have the supporting documentation to match what's on the application, both for a forgiveness standpoint. So whether it is you're looking for full forgiveness, partial forgiveness, whether you're at the 60% or 100% level of that payroll, okay, they're going to be validating that information. Now, one of the common questions that has come up is originally you were supposed to spend the money over 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. Anybody who received the loan prior to June 5th has the option of spreading it out over 24 weeks, okay? You are not required to spend the money over 24 weeks. They're giving you up to 24 weeks. So when you look at the application, it's going to say 8 weeks or 24 weeks. If you took 12 weeks to spend the money, you're going to check the 24-week box. It doesn't mean that they're going to be looking for payroll information for 24 weeks. They're going to be looking for payroll information to support the dollar amount that you're asked to be forgiven. Okay? Mm-hmm. Step number 2, make sure all your information is accurate. Make sure that you put the number of employees correctly. Now, for most of us, we have 1 or 2 employees. We're not getting into massive full-time equivalents or what they refer to as FTEs. But if you've had a 25% in reduction in the full-time equivalents to what you first put on the original application, you're going to have to justify that. I don't think anybody listening or who's going to hear the replay may run into that situation. So you need to be accurate and fill in each box correctly. We find some of the common errors are not putting in your loan number, so that is on your original signed note that you signed electronically. Mm-hmm. the number of full-time employees that should match what you put on the original application. The biggest stickling point for the banks is you're going to have to support the money that you spent via third-party statements, okay? So let's take, for example, and we'll break it down to its simplest level. You're a sole proprietorship.
Right.
You receive the money. You paid yourself by transferring or writing a check from your business account to your personal account. You're going to need a copy of every one of those checks, and you're going to need a copy of your bank statements. If you used a payroll processor, you're going to need a copy of the payroll processor's payments or the direct deposits for the covered period. And covered period means how long are you declaring that for? So if your covered period is for 10 weeks, and you're going to often see that term covered period, 10 weeks, your payroll report should reflect 10 or more weeks, 10 weeks of worth of payroll that should match to your application. Okay. So a lot of what you're going to get kicked back from the banks is if you don't have that third party information, the bank is not going to validate your application and move it to the SBA.
Okay.
If part of what you're asking for is rent payments, mortgage payments, interest payments on business loans, utilities, you're going to need a copy of the utility bill and the canceled check. Or if you have it paid electronically out of your bank, a copy of your bank statement. As long as you have that third-party information, you will be fine and the bank will be able to validate your application. Everyone needs to be aware the bank has up to 60 days to validate your application. So the more concise it is, the more accurate it is, the faster it's going to go through the process.
Mm-hmm.
Once the bank validates the application, they're going to say, yep, all your information is complete. This is what you told us. They're going to send it. They're going to send a certification back to you that you're going to certify that, yes, I'm in agreement. The bank has reviewed this information and yes, all of it is accurate. Once that happens, it's then going to go on to the SBA. And the SBA has up to 6 months to make the determination whether or not your application is forgiven, your PPP loan. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, it's really, I can't stress enough the applications that I've been seeing come through during the test models. A lot of it was we were not getting the third party information.
Sure.
Okay. And in some cases, we got more than what we needed, and that's great. If you want to send more than what you think is there because you're not sure whether they will accept it, send it along. Okay. The other point is you do not have to apply for the forgiveness right at the end of your covered period. Okay. You have up to 10 months from the date the money was dispersed to you to apply for the forgiveness.
Okay.
All right. I also want to make one other point clear. If you decide to wait and wait and wait, once the forgiveness is granted, you are still going to owe the SBA interest on that PPP loan from the date you were issued the money to the date the forgiveness is granted. So once the forgiveness is granted, let's say you receive the money May 1st and you're granted forgiveness September 1st.
Okay.
You're going to owe interest on that $10,000 for June, July, August, and August, 3 months worth of interest that you're going to have to pay.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. So that in order for the forgiveness to be granted, you're going to have to pay the interest that's due to the bank for that loan. Okay. We don't know exactly how that's going to work, but we want to make people aware of this because they're going to go, well, my loan was forgiven. Yes, the principal portion was forgiven, but you're still going to pay the interest that's due to the SBA for the time that money was outstanding.
Jerry, any idea what that interest rate is going to be that they're going to utilize on that?
Depending on when you applied, the rate of interest, it was at 1%.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not big dollars. On $10,000, 1%, you're talking $100.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not huge, but again,
It's
part of the forgiveness is going to be paying the interest on the time that you allotted to use the money.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So that will be there. So yes, the loans will be forgiven, but you still have that interest that you have to pay. So just recapping, start to put your paperwork together. You're not required to go the full 24 weeks. Your covered period is whatever period it took for you within that time frame of applying for the loan. So
Excellent.
okay.
I did not know the interest side of it, so that was
Yeah,
definitely
that was something new, John. That excuse me. That was something that I didn't realize until we started getting into the weeds on the whole forgiveness program. And it was something that was in the original. And we went back and then started to look at the notes that were generated. And yes, we found them within the notes. So, so that is a piece that a lot of people are not aware of. So,
but again, at 1%, it's not a huge. It's not like you're paying $1,000.
If you applied for a $2 million loan, yes, that's going to be a lot more to suck up. But again, it's all relative to the situation.
Right.
It's all relative. Yeah.
So once a person's, I mean, for a lot of people, they use the PPP this summer, and of course, some sole proprietors, we had talked in past shows where they had the unemployment thing all working together. Now we're getting to the point where the PPP stuff is all done. They've already paid themselves, and that money's probably been spent. The unemployment thing has kind of been spent and dealt with. Now we're going to get into fall, and in many parts of the country, I hear DJs every day. I'm hearing them. No, I just did my last wedding, my only wedding for 2020. What have you been hearing? Anything that's going to be coming down the line for small business people to really help keep the entertainment industry or any small business person alive for the next 9 to 12 months when there's really not much income coming in?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are happening. We are continuing to allow further deferments on mortgage payments, and we're capitalizing the interest. So instead of you having, say, a 3-month or a 6-month deferment on your loan, that interest is being capitalized. So the banks are really being pushed by the regulators to really kind of take this into consideration. So I've just started my second round of deferment with many of my clients. So number one, if you've got a loan on your business, talk to the bank and again, continue to seek deferments. You don't want to seek refinancing, but seek deferments, or also seek, hey, can I get 6 months interest only? We're doing a combination of the both, where we're continuing to grant deferments, and then we're going to go back and say to them, okay, you want to go 6 months or 12 months interest only until the cash flow comes in. We're okay with that. Let's kind of walk through that process, John, because
Sure.
I think everybody needs to be aware of what the banks are looking for. In order for us to grant that, we need to know that there's a level of viability to your business. And we're just not prolonging the inevitable that this business is going to close. Okay. So in the recent round that I did, my clients provided me with projections going out 13 weeks, going out to the end of the year, talking about what they have. So DJs, photo booth people, start putting together a prospectus of what you've got coming in income for next year. So those weddings that were deferred to 2021, new business for 2021, for all of you who haven't done budgets, for all of you who haven't done projections, this is going to be a very quick and hard lesson, because the bank's going to be looking for, what are you going to look like? What's going to be your income stream? If you're a DJ or a photo booth operator and you come back to us and say, hey, look, you know what? I had 40 weddings this year, 35 out of the 40 moved to next year, but they moved to like Mondays and Thursdays and Sundays and Fridays, and I'm starting to book Saturdays. I may now have to do 60 weddings next year or 50 weddings next year, but this is what my income stream is going to look like. This is what I've gotten booked deposits and contracts. That's going to make the banker feel comfortable, and we'll say, okay, fine, we'll give you another 90-day deferment, and then let's go interest only on that mortgage on your business condo or your warehouse or your equipment, that equipment loan that you have. Let's go interest only starting in December, when you possibly could be getting in some new businesses, and let's go looking from there. So those are available to you through the remainder of the year. But the key point is, You got to have your 2019 tax returns done. You got to know what you have personally in the bank, so that personal financial statement, and then doing the forecasting. If you've never done it before, I would reach out to SCORE. SCORE is a great resource.
For sure.
There's a ton of CFOs that are retired that are working at SCORE that can give you the tools to help model that out. And we're not looking for huge, corporate balance sheets, simply Excel spreadsheets. Hey, here's my income in 2021. Here's my income month by month by month. Here's my expenses month by month by month. That's what we're going to be looking for.
So you mentioned the prolonging the inevitable. And that, I think, is going to become a real thing for a lot of people in the wedding industry right now, as we have many parts of the country that aren't even potentially looking at having much open for next year. And Minnesota is a prime example where we hear the words that indoor events are dangerous for people to do, and that they're trying to scale those back. New Jersey just put in today a 25-person limit indoors. This could continue into next year. And from your position as a banker, when you have somebody come in there and show that, hey, I've got 80 events, a single operator, I've got 80 events because we're every Friday, Saturday, what have you, there's got to be a level of skepticism that you say, yeah, it may be, but there's also the possibility that there may not be.
Right. And some of the DJs out there that I've talked to, and numerous ones, are looking for a second source of income. So as a banker, if we know this is going to continue, what other sources of income? And I've seen a lot of guys getting creative where they're looking at other avenues of income temporarily to help them out. That's going to help you through the process. But the other thing is, be honest. If you've got a business loan with your bank and you just said, look, I can't weather this. I'm tired of the ups and downs. It's ready to close up shop. Sit down with the bank, talk about how you're going to sell the equipment off. Okay. And then they will work out terms with you once you reestablish whatever your career is. Okay. We don't want to be mean. We don't want to take your house. We don't want to put you out on the streets. It's not the goal of the banking industry. But I think seriously, you need to sit down with your banker and have a conversation.
Sure.
I've got a couple of businesses that have just said, you know what, in their restaurants, we're not going to weather it. We're not going to reopen. I've confirmed I had an SBA loan. I know they're covering me for 6 months. Jerry, at the end of the 6 months, I need to sit down with you, work at liquidating the equipment. I had one in mind. It was a bakery in the Seacoast area.
Right.
She closed up. She actually came to me and said, okay, my husband has taken the garage and converted it into my commercial kitchen. And she got my permission to move the equipment from what was the cafe, the retail outlet, the bakery, put it in her house. She sold off all the chairs and tables, and the person that bought those chairs and tables, they gave her a check payable to the bank, and we paid down on a loan. She's now reestablished to do orders for cakes and cupcakes and birthday cakes and all that. Someday she hopes to get back to weddings, but she's doing that, some small catering, small stuff, working out of her garage, and we kept everything intact, and it's working out fine for her. So she came to me, sat down, had the conversation, came with the business plan, said, this is what I need to do to survive. This is how I'm going to put food on my table, and this is how I'm going to repay you, Mr. Banker. And it's fantastic. It's a real success story.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah. So, I can see a lot of that happening with photographers. I can see that happening with photo booth operators. I know there's one DJ out there who called me and told me, you know what, I'm buying a hot dog cart. And I went, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, it's been my dream. I've always wanted to have a hot dog cart. So he goes, you know what, I'm going to do it. He said, and I'm going to scale back my DJ business, but I'm also going to get the hot dog cart and work through it. So
as you're talking, the baker there, where she kind of adjusted and pivoted, as they like to use. What about those businesses that took out a PPP loan and maybe have the EIDL loan, and now they're to that point where they're like, I can't continue. Restaurants have been a prime example. They've gotten these loans, and now they're just basically they're locking their doors. What ends up happening with some of these government loans that have been put out there?
Well, the first of all, the PPP loan, if they've used the money prior to locking your doors, yes, they're going to go through the forgiveness process. The EIDL loan, they ultimately sign for it both business wise and personal wise. They have to repay that back.
Okay.
So at some point, there's going to be, once we get through this pandemic and we start to flush this out, there is going to be a position of, okay, how do you repay us? How do you get back? Do we know if this pandemic continues? And I've had the opportunity to be on several calls with Senator Collins. They're looking at this. How do we help these out? And
Mm-hmm.
for those who were in the main market area, and even in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, I put out there that one of my conversations with Senator Collins, you originated the PPP program. I'm asking you, we've got to do something for the wedding industry because this is beyond our control. We're not wanting to do this. We're not wanting to help people and make their dreams come true. But we're restricted by the guidelines of the federal government, the state mandates, whatever they would be.
Right.
She's fully aware of it. And preliminary, I understand they're working on some other relief packages. I've heard some things thrown around about a second round of PPP, but restrictions for businesses that truly cannot operate and making it more streamlined.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see over the next coming weeks what happens. And I think it's very fluid. We just, as the business owner, you have to kind of keep your chin up, start looking towards 2021 and what can we do to get through this? I mean, we all know September, October, everything's been crashed. We know the limitations. We hear about the resurgence. We're dealing with the schools. At some point, we've got to get to that level of, okay, let's look forward to 2021. And that's what I'm telling a lot of business owners. Start focusing in on 2021. What can you do? Will we see some of this stuff rising up? I'm getting inquiries for smaller weddings now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we look at in part of our presentation is what do we see happening in 2021? I think you're going to see smaller, more creative, more tighter venues. I have a wedding October 10th. They were going to be in a venue and it's Point Sebago. They said, nope, you can't have it indoors. We're shutting the facility. They ended up finding the River Queen boat in Naples that can hold 100 people. It is compliant, and they're going to have the wedding reception on that, and they're going to a friend's backyard for the ceremony. I think we're going to see people being much more creative with that.
I think so. And I don't know about in your market, but we're seeing venues that have indoor facilities that are basically just kind of mothballing that and starting to look at adding big outdoor structures, tents of, more semi-permanent tents for 2021.
Correct.
And
yeah. And I think if we can get to that level where we're comfortable with 200 people outside and you can have dancing and you can have a bar, I think that's where people are going to feel more comfortable. So when we talk about a transition, I think it's going to be more outdoors in 2021. I think a lot of the venues that were able to have 300 and 400 person gatherings, I think those are going to be mothballed till 2022. It's very interesting. I had two couples that I've been talking to. Both of them don't want to commit because they don't know if these restrictions continue.
Right.
Are they going to move to 2022? And I think we're going to see some of that with the 2021 weddings. I'm not going to put my vendors through this. Let me step back. Let me wait a little bit. So I think we're still going to be in a year of transition. I think we're going to be in a year, 2021 is going to be a little bit of an influx. I think we will see the return, but I don't think we're going to see us to the level that we saw in 2019, 2018, not till 2022.
One interesting thing that I've had here in the last couple of weeks with conversations around here is brides who had initially moved to 2021 from 2020, and now they're having second thoughts. From the standpoint, they're like, we're just going to cancel next year. We're just going to go and do a small 10-person backyard thing, and that's it. Just so they can get on with their lives. I've heard that phrase from my clients who have either canceled or what have you, that getting on with their lives. And I think we're going to see probably between now and Christmas a rash of those. As people are looking like 2021, it won't happen either. Let's just deal with it. And who knows? New Year's Eve could be a huge night for weddings at home.
Yep. And I think the other thing too is our people just let's get through the wedding and then maybe we have a party afterwards. Maybe we have a year later, we have sort of a re-ceremony again. And I think that's going to be a resurgence of, hey, we had our wedding up. A client of mine, his daughter did get married in the backyard. And he said, we're going to wait till 2021. And hopefully we can have the 250 people at a place in Bedford, New Hampshire, if they will allow it. Now I look at LaBelle Winery. They went to a complete outdoor tent. And in New Hampshire, you can have, I think it's up to 125 people outside. So they're that's what they're beginning to market to.
Right.
For DJs, let's talk about 2021. Are you marketing for safety? Hey, I have a setup. We can be compliable. Yes, we're do small little backyard weddings, for 3 hours. Maybe it's a different price point. Maybe it's I can see advertising micro weddings and full weddings. So maybe you do a micro wedding for 3 hours. That is 2/3 the price of what you were going to charge. But again, it becomes a source of income.
Yeah.
Look at how creative the restaurant industry got with outside dining and closing off the streets. So a lot of these places started to reinvent themselves. A very large client of mine that has multiple restaurant locations, huge menu, Mexican menu. And what they've done is they've decided they're paring that menu down.
Right. I was just going to mention that. Yeah. If you've seen that too.
So do we need to begin to think in our industry, how do we pare down our services? You go on some DJ websites and they got everything in the world. Well, how do you pare down your services? So now it's creatively thinking about, how am I going to go to market with my strategy? How am I going to develop and win new clients? If in Minnesota, it's going to be those micro weddings and those little family gatherings, do you create something that specifically attracts those people that maybe you could knock off an afternoon and an evening wedding?
Right.
So you got somebody that maybe is going to do a ceremony at 12 and end by 4, and then you can pick up and go to a ceremony at 6:30 for a sunset ceremony and a couple of hours dinner. I mean, I've seen a number in the Real Brides magazines where they didn't have they had like music in the background.
Right.
They didn't have a dance floor. They set up long tables. People had dinner. They socialized. It may be that basis that I can create playlists that create a lot of fun for you and not so much just the dancing at weddings. So how do you reinvent it? How do you come up with something that says, we'll create a musical vibe for you for the ceremony, for cocktail hour? We'll create a real interactive dinner. And maybe it is just the bride and groom get up and dance and then maybe a few other people. So really, again, tying it back to the banks and how you're going to survive, we as bankers are looking at that. How are you reinventing your business? How are you changing your business model to best fit what's happening in this economy?
I think that's a great point, because there's a lot of DJs I talk to who are in this world of denial, for lack of a better way to describe it right now. And they're basically, I do events for 500 people and I need to have a wall-to-wall crowd that my dance floor is just going, that kind of a thing. It's like without reinventing or without changing or modifying or being adaptable.
Yep.
That's going to be a really tough situation for those people, because they might find a show here, a show there, but some of that is exactly the kind of stuff that the local governing officials are going to say, hey, that can't go on like that, because that's a dangerous activity at this point in time in history.
Right. And, John, let's look at the business world overall. No matter who you are in the business world, everybody is reinventing themselves. Everybody's deciding, how am I going to do my marketing? How am I going to do my strategy? Okay. There's a surf shop here in Agunquit, and the owner knows everybody's going outdoors. Well, he had a small little, it was called Hooks, and it was outdoor sort of Baja type food. He said, Jerry, I didn't open it this year, and I'm going to make that a paddleboard shop because people are going after paddleboards.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
He said, I can't keep them in stock. Everybody's going towards outdoor recreation. So, again, thinking about that, if you're a DJ and you have to have 500 people and you have to have a dance floor, you may now be the dinosaur for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. But the DJ that's comfortable, and I like some of the posts that are out there where, excuse me, the DJ created this small little ceremony setup, the portable speakers, hey, I'm doing the streaming, I'm creating playlists, we're doing this. That's where you're really going to survive, and that's where it becomes a different world. It's very hard in the society we're in today, where for 10 years we had this tremendous run of a great economy.
Yeah.
And yes, I saw so many people get into the industry, and everybody wanted to be in weddings, and everybody saw the value that you could bring to these couples. And there are many, many talented people out there. But I look at DJ Aga, who DJs at a place called Main Street, and it's not about seeing the people on a dance floor. For him, it's people sitting at the table enjoying the music that he's playing, what should be sort of like the cocktail drinking hour. Yes, they have to close at a certain time, but yet he's very satisfied at what he's doing, because he knows that's the new norm for him
Right.
for the coming months, you know? And we have to look at that, photo booths. Are you okay going to somebody's house? Hey, the advertisement out there, we're safe, we can create a special type atmosphere for you, open photo booth. Hey, you don't have to worry about COVID. Maybe it's a family reunion. Maybe it's something up at the camps. However you're going to do it, start seeking those new avenues of revenue where we'll be completely different. I mean, I'll tell you now, for DJs, photo booths, camping out there is unbelievable. I have several campgrounds in my portfolio, and they are seeing banner years.
Huge.
Because people want to be outdoors. So, here's your opportunity. I begin to market to those people, see where people's trends and where their lives are going. That will help you tremendously.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we talked about this, and you mentioned a little bit that sometimes you're going to be taking a little bit less of a paycheck per event for the period of time.
Yep.
Is it, would you call it survival mode that we're in right now? Or is it, compared to maybe last year when we was a profitable mode?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best way I could describe it, I think.
Right. And John, you and I have been around long enough. We're in an economic recession, if not close to a depression. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we learned to get into survival mode. We in the banking industry, we're in survival mode. Yep. I mean, with the low interest rate environment, we've lost significant income. We're in survival mode right now. We know we have to make loans. We also know we have to reserve for loan losses. So every industry is doing it. Restaurants are doing it. They're in survival mode. And so you have to think along those lines of what's going to get the next check, what's going to get the next dollar in my pocket so I can put food on the table.
Yeah.
The egos and whatever else you thought was business operating over the past 10 years, you now have to change. And it's something, again, I spoke about over the past year. At some point, this growth, this bull market is going to come to a halt. Did we ever think it was going to be the pandemic? No way. But you know what? It's been an eye-opener for a lot of people who have said, wow, I never really thought I'd be in this position. And it's difficult. It's extremely difficult.
It was just about a year ago that you used those exact words that this bull market wasn't going to continue. I sat in the front row and heard you say it, and I just looked around the room and people were like, what is he talking about? This is going to go on forever. I'm going to have 2020 I'm going to make so much money. Yeah. Whoops.
Yeah. Oops.
So
but,
let's go ahead.
Again, it's thinking about if you want to do this, and there is, and I'm going to say this as a banker for 30 years. Okay. There's no shame in any business owner going, you know what? I know I just can't make it, and I have to shut my doors and take a break, and I'm going to look at something else and maybe go back. Or I've done this full time for 5 or 6 years. It's been great, but I'm going to go to a part-time basis. And I think every industry, we're going to look at it. There's so many restaurants out. I believe 40% of all the restaurants across the United States are not going to survive. Well, there's going to be probably 30 to 40% of our industry that's not going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Those that do survive have re-engineered themselves so they can be able to master and go after what they need. So,
Jerry, we got a great question here from Mike. Thank you, Mike, for the question. If you guys do have questions, by the way, put those down into the chat, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube. Mike asks, when he goes out to a restaurant or the hair salon, the prices have actually have gone up. And he's wondering why us as entertainers are we're headed down we're going the other direction and lowering our prices. What's your thoughts on that?
It's a hard call. People recognize the restaurants have raised their prices. They've raised their prices because they've had to do things differently. Okay. Hair salons, yes, they've got to have the PPE. They can't have people in the lobby. They've got to do cleaning in between. There's reasons why those prices went up. My daughter went to the dentist, and right away when I got the email reminding her of the appointment, it clearly said right there, we're adding $15 for PPE as part of your visit, which immediately I called Delta Dental, and they're like, yeah, no problem. We're covering it under your insurance. Again, think about how you would want to raise that price. If you want to raise that price, okay, what are you doing to raise that price? Okay. What is it that you're doing differently than you did before that people want to pay that extra value? And if it is, hey, I'm going to customize and I'm going to come here to your group and I'm going to do some customization and I'm going to do all this different stuff, you have to sell yourself and why you want a price increase. You just can't say, well, everybody's raising their prices, so I'm going to get more money. You need to justify why you're doing that. Okay. Let me give you an example. Banking industry. Interest rates, although everybody says interest rates are low, they'll come back to me and go, well, gee, how come it's not at 2% like I'm seeing advertised on TV for mortgages? How come commercial loans are 3.5% to 4%? Well, part of what we have to do is we have to now reserve for loan losses. There are a number of loans that are not going to get repaid, and we have to absorb those losses. So the only way we can do that is we've got to build capital. That's a reason in the banking industry. For us in the DJ industry, what's the reason? Hey, I've got to bring protective gear. Hey, I've got to sanitize my equipment. Before I come, I'm going to have covers that I'm going to change. I'm going to sanitize the microphone after everybody. Again, people will be willing to pay for that if you explain why you need to do it.
And I think one factor that's going to affect the pricing for next year, and we mentioned this earlier, is that it might be I'm doing a dinner or ceremony cocktail, and maybe that's about it. That the type of services that we have offered in the past just aren't going to play at that level.
Right.
If I'm under a tent outside, probably bringing a huge light show, not going to be part of the thing. If I'm under a tent outside, it might be that the bugs come out at 10 o'clock here in Minnesota and everyone is out the door. There's going to be factors. So I think that the types of services are going to probably be the biggest change. And I think another area is that we look at some of the venues up here that could handle 4 weddings on a Saturday. Some of these venues are going to be out of commission completely because they're downtown, whatever main street. There's no room for tents. Some of the places that could do 2 now can only find space for 1 tent outside. I think we're going to just have smaller events, backyard events, and fewer opportunities. Right. And I think all these things are going to play into it, where we're going to find that next summer, even if there are going to be next summer, but we're going to find that the competition for doing these simple weddings are going to be pretty extreme.
Exactly. And John, the other thing, think about that large venue. They have fixed costs. They know to be profitable, they've got to do 4 weddings a day. When you cut it down to 1, those fixed costs don't go away. They've got to cover them, or they turn around and say, I don't open. So the idea is great. You may have wanted to spend only, they could rent it out and everybody would pay $4,000. But if they no longer can get $16,000 on a Saturday for the rental of the place, and now they're cut down to 1 wedding, and their fixed costs are $4,000, they've got to get $5,000 for that wedding, or else they've got to shut the doors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, DJs and photo booth guys, think of the same thing. You've got a baseline that covers your costs. What is the cost and the baseline that you have to charge? So if you say to people, great, it is a backyard wedding, but I have a fixed cost to do a wedding, this is what I'm going to charge, then certainly do that. And Mike's question too, it may naturally flush itself out, where if enough people leave the industry, you may be able to then sort of control the price a little bit, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you may see some things shifting. So be cognizant of your market, be cognizant of what is happening around in the industry, who's leaving, who's going. I don't hear of guys starting out there, and in talking to the manufacturers, there's not a ton of new equipment coming out. I don't think guys are running out to go, oh, I want to be a DJ now. Like in 2008, when everybody was out of work and people were still getting married, when we had the Great Recession, we didn't have all these restrictions. So people were looking whether they were going to all of a sudden become a painter or a cartographer. I don't think that's going to happen this round. I think people are not going to have the money to invest to start up a business. And I'm hearing that from SCORE. And I was just on the phone this morning with the head of SCORE in New Hampshire. And he's saying, we're not seeing new people coming in wanting to start businesses. The majority of what we're getting right now is businesses wanting to know how to survive.
And interesting, you mentioned manufacturers, and I had a discussion with a representative from the in-music companies, Denon, Akai, Newmark, what have you. They were talking that that Newmark is having one of the best years ever in sales. The best-selling controller that has outsold every other controller this year is the little Party to Go, that little controller about this big that has the 3 lights in the front. And we saw that at Expo. We've seen that at a couple of places because we don't have people getting into the mobile industry. We've got people who are wanting to. Well, it's a hobby. Let's play. We love music. Let's play it in our bedroom. Or people who are wanting to, hey, I'm going to try it and see if I like it, and maybe I'll go do a club, whatever. So it's an interesting situation of what's going on out there. But the best selling controller.
And again, it's and I think also too, not only that, but bedroom, but I think DJs are rethinking the equipment that they need. Do I need this huge big setup and so forth, or how do I get away simple and easier? And again, let's go back to Mike's question. How do you make, how come everybody's raising their prices? How do we do it? Well, if you come out with smaller, simple, easier equipment, and you're not doing a huge production now for 500 people, you probably can get your same price. It's just you're now rethinking is how do I do it more cost effectively?
Yeah, really could add that to make the same rates go further.
And again, that goes back to understanding your finances and understanding your business. It's not just about raising prices. And again, think about, don't compare our industry to the restaurant industry. The restaurant industry isn't comparing itself to the software company, and the software company is not comparing itself to the manufacturing company. Stay in the lane of our industry. What is our industry doing? And you have to accept what is generally happening if you want to be in that industry.
Yeah. Jerry, we got a few more minutes left. We touched on this briefly. You mentioned earlier that we're in the midst of a recession, bordering on a possible depression. Let's look into what kind of things are you hearing? I mean, was it today or yesterday? The chair or one of the Federal Reserve officers here in Minnesota came out and was talking that they have got more money to pump into the economy if the representatives and such would, or Congress would allow that to happen. What are you hearing out there as far as which direction are we going to be going? I mean, places are shutting down here in Minnesota. Things have really tightened up for us as we've gone along, and we haven't even had the surge that some other states have had recently. What are you hearing?
I'm in the Northeast, and the Northeast seems to, as I keep seeing in media and hearing and reading, is we did it right. But what I really think is businesses continuing. People are working on their homes. Look at how crowded Home Depot, how crowded Lowe's is. I think where the market is going to be affected is going to be retail, your malls. Okay. Everybody is still, their houses. I'm hearing from contractors, from painters, from builders. Market is still strong. Manufacturing is still strong. Automobile industry has regained some footing. What really is breaking out from this segment is where you have the meeting, the entertainment, the hospitality, all of those pieces, travel, are all going to take some time to survive. I'm getting calls every day from people that are looking to finance projects, whether it's apartment buildings, whether it's new warehouse space, whether it's buying new machinery. A company I have in my portfolio does a lot of dried good packaging. And with everybody now cooking at home, their business exploded.
Sure.
And they're buying more machinery. They're growing. I have a brewery that created an outdoor beer garden to deal with it. And he just called me and said, I need more tanks where people are buying more craft beer. And I thought craft beer was the one that was really going to get hit in this downturn. And no, they're doing strong. We know of a couple of distilleries that are starting to expand. So there's segments of the market. Are banks lending? Yes, we are. But we just want to make sure we're lending for the right reasons. So loans are out there. We're actively hunting as lenders. We're actively looking for new business. People are looking for investment real estate. The horrible things you hear, oh my God, rental market and 28 million people are going to be evicted. I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing from renters that people are paying their rent. I'm hearing from renters that they're not having problems. And some of them have large portfolios of rental properties.
Wow.
They may have a one-off here or one-off there, but what their one-offs are people that they knew were a problem prior to the pandemic.
And just use it as an excuse to continue.
They're using as an excuse. So I think we're going to continue to expand pharmaceuticals, what you're seeing out there in the presence. I mean, stores are having to rebuild themselves. Businesses are still thriving. Small retail is still thriving. Malls are going to become dinosaurs. More of those spaces are going to go away.
Yeah.
It was interesting. We saw today that Gentleman's Warehouse declared bankruptcy, Joseph S. Bank, because everybody's working from home. Nobody's going to get dressed up, wake up in the morning, take a shower, put a suit on, and then go down to the family room and start doing the business for the day.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also seeing businesses want to see me back out. So the suits are coming out of the closet. The ties are being pressed and the white shirts are being cleaned, and we're moving in that direction. So I think that's a positive.
Yeah. Excellent. Jerry, we got to wrap things up. Thank you much for being on, my friend. Great information. And thank you guys for being with us and some of the questions and chat. You guys had some great thoughts and such on that tonight. We're going to continue in about 15 minutes here. We're going to have our second show tonight talking about hobbies and kind of doing a little reflection on some of the things that a lot of you have been doing on the side here for over the last couple of months, just to get a little bit different flavor tonight. So, Jerry, once again, thank you for being on with me tonight.
Thanks so much, John. And again, anybody has any questions, reach out to me. Glad to give you whatever advice I can.
And that's Jerry at
MainDiscJockey.com. Maine like the state Maine, disc jockey with a C, and I'll be glad to talk to you.
Sounds great. Thank you guys for being with us. We'll be back in about 10.
Okay.